afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. On behalf of the Secretary General, the National President, and the entire Executive Committee of the United Democratic Party, I want to wish you a very happy, prosperous, peaceful, and productive 2024. This is going to be another historic interaction between the Secretary General and the party leader with the Gambian community as well as the media present here. Following his New Year's messages, there would be an opportunity for a question and answer session. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this first meeting press by the party leader, Secretary General, His Excellency Hussein Udao. Your Excellency, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much for congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let me express my profound appreciation to you for honoring our call whenever you did anything. No matter how short the road is, you have to find time to come and listen to the party or really engage in conversation with you. Gentlemen of the press, and through you, the relationship. I translated SSC. I am engaged undertaking in practical exercises outside. I am not a socially important, and because of this, I will start. I want to be addressed with information of the demise of a very good patriot, a man who has devoted his life to the service of this country. He was one of the principal architects in the fight against dictatorship in the Gambia, and indeed one of the people promoting democracy in the Gambia. He did all he could in his power as a Gambian by his writing, by his speeches, to galvanize the people of the Gambia against the dictator Yahya Jammeh. Alas, he saw him out, but maybe he hasn't seen all that he wanted to see in his crusade for the restoration of democracy in this country. This gentleman was my classmate. We were in St. Augustine's together, and we all left St. Augustine from 5 and parted our ways. But about 2013, our paths crossed again when I visited the United States of America. This gentleman was Matthew Jallo. Matthew Jallo is a well-known Gambian who was in the forefront of the fight against dictatorship in this country, and he did all that he could in his power to ensure that this country is giving the government that it deserves. I want to express my profound condolences and sincere sympathy to his family in Sambang, to all his friends, his former classmates, and indeed to those who brought him up, that is the Catholic missionary here. And I want to say that Gambia today is poorer by a very good patriot. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we are gathered here today not really to be given the conventional New Year messages that we used to do. But I want to first of all say to all of you, Happy New Year, and that we hope that this year will envelop the best for all of you, and that together, all Gambians together, will ensure that this country moves in the direction that we all want it to be. We hope that we can change the trajectory in which this country is going on. We have just ended the year 2023, and indeed, this year, 2023, was a year of disaster, a year of misfortune, a year that is described as annus horribilis. And indeed, it is so. The annus horribilis is glaring in the 2023 as well as the 2024 budgets the government has just recently presented to Gambians. These two budgets and their allocation patterns show that the government does not have a clearly articulated development program or vision for the country, nor does it prioritize the welfare of the ordinary Gambians. These budgets are an exacerbation of the inequality already existing in our society. The rich, the powerful, and the connected are the major beneficiaries of our national resources. When we, I may use the communist language, lumpen proletariats are the ones who have been missed out deliberately out of this budget. And this has been done while the economy is steeped in inequality, poverty, unemployment, and entrenched rampant systemic corruption. Ours is an economy and a state that has been captured by sectoral cartels and special interest groups. Reliance on a national budget which is financed by a mixture of borrowing, taxation, and grants cannot develop our country. The President has recently announced a series of service taxes increases which will further fuel the hardships Gambians continue to face. Indeed, he calls this as non-taxable revenues, that all this will be hiked, so that those of you who really go to the courts to file your processes is now becoming more difficult for you, because it will be too expensive for the poor man in Tankonkunda to be able to afford the filing fees. So he'll be denied access to justice. Your land rents are going to be increased. Your fees for renewal of leases are going to be increased. The cost of your passports are all going to be increased, so that the ordinary person will not be able to have access to these services because of the increases in the rate that that used to be charged on them. And this is all done in order to be able to finance their own wasteful spending. And indeed, this wasteful spending, we can see it in the budget. The projected fiscal deficit for 2024 is 4.45 billion, or 2.55 of GDP. The debt to GDP ratio is about 85% of GDP. Our national debt as at 2023 is $110 billion. The interest payments on our national debt increased from 3.5 billion to 7.5 billion, which is more than the combined allocation for health, education, and agriculture. Yahya Jammeh, in all his madness, in 22 years, left us with a national debt of 48 billion. While President Barrow, who claims to be a man of austerity, who claims to be a man who came to calm down, to calm down on excess on wastages, has increased our debt to 62 billion by 62 billion in 7 years. And this, of course, has brought up our national debt to the global figure of $110 billion. Our balance of payments and terms of trade are all negative. The official rate of inflation is said to be 18%, but the market tells us that the rate of inflation is much higher than 18%. Ordinary Gambians are struggling to make ends meet. Those of you who went to Serakunda market and face the butcher or the fishmonger or the vegetable vendor would know that really the rate of inflation is far above 18%. Those of us whose pockets are affected know that. But government, in its desire to mislead the Gambian people, pegs the inflation rate at 18%, which is really a misleading statistics for the Gambian people. The international travel for 2024 is increased from 40 million to $60 million. The cost of our ministers, our directors, our president, the cost of their travels abroad is increased from 40 million to 60 million. And indeed, the cost of the medical treatment for the few privileged people has also been increased from 40 million to 60 million. You and I, the rest of us, are not catered for in this amount, in this allocation. This is for the ministers, the spouses, and indeed those who are well connected to them to foot their medical bills abroad. Now, the specific allocations to the offices of the president is 872.6 million. Foreign affairs is 1.7 billion. Finance and economic affairs 2.05 billion. Infrastructure 2.6 billion. Youth and sports 122 million, 0.3. Basic education 2 billion. Secondary education 2 billion. Minister of Health 2.3 billion. Interior 1.58 billion. Tourism 45.1 million. It's obvious from these allocations that government is placing priorities on areas that do not deserve that sort of attention. $872.6 million is allocated to the president's office. For what purpose? We all know that the president's office is probably the least productive sector of the economy of this country. The least productive sector of this country. In fact, it is the sector where gossips is the center of gossips. And how can anybody in his right mind put $872.6 million to such a sector? As compared to youth and sports, which is only 122.3 million. No wonder the GFF is having heart in hand going around seeking donations to finance the AFCON the AFCON campaign. The resources that are allocated to office like Office of the President, better part of that should have been given to the Ministry of Youth and Sport, particularly when we already know that this year Gambia Football Federation or the Scorpions will be embarking on a campaign which is very expensive, a campaign to bring us honor, a campaign to ensure that our country is put on the map of the world through our youth. But no, that is not their priority. Their priority is really to put money into a sector which misuses those funds for purposes that are not for the promotion of the welfare of the people of Gambia, but for the promotion of the welfare of specific individuals. And indeed, you know that some of these funds are used for purposes that are completely unconnected to government activities. So you can see how the misallocations are, and this is what is going to make the year 2024 another year of misfortune, another year of disaster for the Gambian people. (2023) really was a year that Gambians had hoped that our democratization process would have really taken steps, concrete steps, that would convince everyone that really Gambia is ready for a new constitution. The security of our electoral system, our constitution, the draft constitution remains in coma. And which means I do not know, whether it's in the president's office or it's in the Minister of Justice, but it's in a state of coma and needs to be resuscitated. And there are absolutely no concrete steps have been taken to ensure that this is done. And the constitution has to be put in place so that the other legal parameters, other legal reforms can really properly follow. The Elections Act ought to have really been an appendage to the elections, to the Constitution, because the Constitution should have provided the platform, the foundation for the elections, before the Elections Act. That is also gathering dust somewhere in the National Assembly, and nothing is being done about it. The institutional reforms that we had envisaged is certainly not taking place, and there's much talked about security sector's reform has been more of lip service than real action. Every time we are told that steps have been taken to ensure that proper reform of the security sector is carried out. But none concrete step has really been taken which could convince any Gambian that this particular sector, as important as it is, has been given the needed reform it deserves. Gentlemen of the press, have referred to 2023 as a disaster, a year of misfortune. Our country is facing a national disaster with regard to the backway and irregular migration. Thousands of our youth from across the country and in every community are taking the backway because they desperately need to make a decent and honest living to support their families. A national disaster should therefore be declared with a clearly articulated strategy to address irregular migration and to create youth employment and empowerment. Few months ago, the number of Gambian youths who perished in the Mediterranean Sea Due to the callous policies of this government, the number is very frightening. Carton, the community of Carton alone, registered 27 young people who lost their lives just from one community. Jambur registered 41 youths, and Bakau registered 21 youths who lost their lives. These are just examples, samples taken from 3 communities. We had disasters in the Nyomi, people from Nyomi, in other parts of the country. And indeed, all these young people have lost hope in the country. They have thought that with a change of government, their condition would improve, that employment would be created, if not direct employment by the government, but then conditions will be created which will really make it easier for them to pick up employment, either self-employment or employment in other places. Yeah. Yeah. And with regards to the okay. Yeah. With regard to the state or transfer of democracy, the following democratic principles have been eroded due to weaponization of state institutions against political opponents. I am sure that you ladies and gentlemen of the press are aware and in fact are witnesses to how the state is weaponizing institutions in order to thwart our democratic process. Step measures have been taken to silence opponents. The press have been threatened in the past year, all in a bid to silence them. And the press is a very important component, important pillars, important agents in the promotion of democracy, in the creation of democracy in any country. Where you have a free press, you can be sure that you can have a true democracy. But alas, this is not what is really happening in the country. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen of the press, you must have read in your own medium that it is proposed to increase the nomination fees for presidential candidates from its current amount to $1 million for $1 million for any candidate. You may recall that in 2015 or thereabout, Yahya Jammeh also made such a proposal, and the entire political class, including those in government today, raised hell against it. That in fact, that was a ploy by Jammeh to keep out potential opponents, because it will be reducing participation in the presidential elections, will be reducing only to the level of those who are rich, those who can offer better ideas, those who can be better leaders in the country, because of their weak financial conditions, cannot afford the $1 million. We all cried against it, and I think it was then that Yahya Jammeh decided to reduce it from 1 million to $500,000. This government that has said it wants to ensure that there's true democracy, this government that says that all those legislations by Jammeh were anti-democratic, were only measures to muzzle the growth of political power or to give opportunity to other political parties or other political contenders to seek for the office of the president can now turn around and really want to implement such a measure that is an antithesis of what really this government has stood for. It's also a sign or a step towards Muslim democracy, towards curtailing the ability of Gambians to really partake in presidential elections. Gentlemen of the press, you can be sure that when I condemn this, I'm not doing so for UDP because UDP has the money to pay $1 million for its candidates. So it's not for us. It's for others who really are not in a position to do so. The independent candidates who may not be in a position to do so. You cannot just shut them out because you feel that the only way you can advance the democratization, and when I say D, is DE. Is DE democratization, you know, not democratization, but you really want to, backslide our democracy into a situation that really that's really not within the contemplation of the Gambian people. There is lack of respect for the rule of law by the government. And when I say by the government, I mean not by the government, either the central government, the executive itself, or its agencies, such as the security. We've now seen that the German style of police operation has really reared its head, and indeed, it is one that has taken center stage. Fridays are the days that are assigned for the arrest of suspects, alleged suspects who have committed crimes. Fridays are the days that are assigned for doing that. So that Saturday and Sunday, they can be kept in custody, and while the clock takes the minutes, for them to clock the 72 hours before any action is done. That was the German style of doing things. That is the dictator style of doing things, and that is why I do not hesitate to say that, that Adama Barrow is gradually becoming a dictator in this country. And these are the proofs of it. And if anybody thinks that I'm wrong, please engage me and ask me to give you the evidence, and I'll give you the evidence. Barrow is gradually becoming a dictator in this country. The diversity, equity, and inclusion are essential democratic principles that aim to promote fairness, equal opportunities, and respect for all individuals, regardless of their background or identity and perspectives. These principles are about creating a more just and inclusive society. The near insults, the disrespect that is made to some members of the opposition just confirms this principle that I'm saying, because they are unwilling to accept that diversity. They are unwilling to accept differing views, and because of that, treatments are being made out of opposition that they do not deserve. The opposition is denied constantly access to the national media. What we see when some group of NPP non-entities organize a non-event. And when I say non-event, I mean a non-event that is not government. You find GRTS there in their full gear, with more than the number of people, more than the number of cameras that are needed for the occasion. when opposition parties, particularly UDP, holds events of a national nature where they are requested to be, they do not show up. And that is contravention of the Constitution. And indeed, it was one of the issues that Adama Barrow found as a grouse with the Jammeh administration, that you cannot really run a true democratic state when others are excluded from the use of state resources. That unequal treatment is probably becoming the hallmark of this government. The nexus of rampant corruption, lack of transparency and accountability, the drug menace, and interference in the operation of area councils and municipalities are a direct threat to our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let me say that the Auditor General's report, or reports from the Auditor General, which some uninformed people, some uneducated people consider as opinion, shows the level of corruption in this country. That it is cankerworm that is destroying the fabric of our society. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate, for once, the National Assembly for at least passing the anti-corruption bill into law that has dragged for more than 4 or 5 years. I want to congratulate them for doing that. But also, let there be the political will on the part of the executive to implement the Anti-Corruption Act to its letter. There should be no sacred cows. There should be no selective investigation of corrupt practices. It should go right across the board. And indeed, people who are suspected of harboring illicit gains, illicit proceeds of corrupt practice should really also be made to face the full force of the law. Otherwise, the passing of the anti-corruption or the passing of the anti-corruption bill into act will just be a mere facade. It will be a mere window dressing. It will not be a real drive against the fight against. It will not be a real drive against the fight against corruption. And I challenge the government. I challenge the government that the 735, is it 750,000 dollars, which I hear the guys call Nakolo. This should be certainly a prime candidate for investigation before this anti-corruption tribunal that should be set up. Our country has lost respect and credibility in the eyes of the world because this country is being turned into the transit route for drug and drug dealers. How many tons of cocaine, how many tons of drugs are confiscated or are impounded, and yet we have not heard of any successful prosecution of any of those people that have been arrested. So take the chance, bring your drugs into the Gambia to have it transited wherever you want to go, and if you are caught, we'll go underground and stop any prosecution by scuttling the evidence that the prosecutors needed, or the law enforcement needed to put before the court. I was amazed when I heard an audio where someone who is alleged to be an imam, who calls himself an imam, and indeed who is known to be close to to the corridors of power, confessing that he has talibans. He does not need money from anybody. But he has talibans in Europe who are drug dealers. They give you money. That person is certainly should have been arrested by the drug law enforcement agencies for aiding and abetting drug dealers. Because whatever he does, whether spiritually or otherwise, he is aiding and abetting drug dealers, and that is why he is being given money. So the great menace is really very close to the corridors of power. Because this particular imam, I know personally, and I know that he has undertaken several errands, so-called religious errands, on behalf of people who today are really in control of the government machinery of this country. So if you can have those, the threat that is exposed by drug traffickers in this country will certainly not be seriously handled by the powers that should handle it. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I think everybody wants to have free movement of vehicles on our roads, free movements of bicycles, and indeed unimpeded movements of pedestrians who will not be put in fear or be knocked down by vehicles, so that the road paths, the footpaths would be cleared of all obstacles. That is indeed expected to be done by any responsible authority. But why do you have to demolish structures that have absolutely no bearing on the road, that have no obstruction to the road? In fact, why destroy things that have been put in places to stop rain getting into shops, or really serve as canopy, so that it can be a rain breaker, can be wind breaker, and they do not have anything to do with the traffic on the roads. This, I think, is what has been wrong with this exercise. That we know everywhere in the world, beautifications of cities, beautification of neighborhoods. People grow flowers and so forth outside of their homes in order to beautify the places. I am yet to be educated, but I have not seen anywhere in the Fiscal Plan and Development Act that says that you cannot really beautify the frontage of your property. I have not seen it, although I heard someone say that you have to get a permit for it. And I certainly want to be educated, because we are not technicians. We looked at the law and we didn't find it in the law, but maybe there's someone in your rules or directives that says you cannot do that. So let us do this road clearance with a human face. Let us not deprive these poor women, let us not deprive these young men who have their car washing facilities around on the roadside. Let us allow them to carry out this exercise, so that they will not venture on the back way. If you move out those young people who have their car washing facilities on the road, you move them away, where do they go? You certainly cannot have a car wash inside your father's compound. And indeed, all these people come from afar, and they converge in places to really undertake these to carry out these decent earning activities, so that they can live a decent life, an honorable life, a life that is free of criminality, a life that will not really spur them to go to go and find greener pasture elsewhere. But the government has to help them. Indeed, what I would have expected the government to do was to organize these young men and women, organize them in locations. You allocate them land and give them all the facilities so that they could carry out their car washing activities and earn decent living. And of course, that will be a way of employing the young people. And ladies and gentlemen, the secrecy and lack of transparency in the recycling of our strategic national asset, such as, of course, the Trans-Gambia Bridge, the Gambia Ports Authority, and the airport, certainly should halt. This is a government that condemned Yahya Jammeh government for lacking in transparency. It should now be really the principal agent for transparency in this country. Yet, whatever they do with respect to our national assets have not been done with any degree of transparency. I do not believe that it is enough for the minister to go to the National Assembly and, excuse my word, and regurgitate what he has stated in a press interview. Documentary evidence should be made available to lawmakers so that they can really examine the documents and say whether or not what was being done was in the best interest of the country, and that the giving away of this asset will not in fact compromise our national security, because every aspect, all these institutions, the Gambia Ports Authority, the airport, their operations have national security elements. There should be national security concerns. You cannot really give our airport to people who really are not responsible for managing the security affairs of this country, and who only interest in those assets are really the profits that they can make. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this year is not going to be different from the year 2023. This year probably will be worse than 2023, because this government has taken it upon itself not to care for what people say. This government that prides itself to say that we have the power, we have the authority to do what we want to do, and we will do it. A government that says nobody can stop us from doing what we want to do has nothing in store for you but misfortune and disaster, because they will be reckless in their thinking, they will be reckless in their actions, believing that nobody on the surface of this earth can really stop them from doing what they want to do. A government that you elected, a government to whom you ceded your power, your sovereignty, and asked them to be your agents in the exercise of your delegated power, can turn around to you and tell you, I am as powerful as Yahya Jammeh, in fact, more powerful than Yahya Jammeh, because apart from all the security apparatuses that Yahya Jammeh had, I also have the economic. Such a government certainly will do things without regard to you, without regard to your views. And indeed, we've seen it happen in the way that they have treated the area council, the municipalities. And indeed, that is what this government will continue to do to stifle the aspirations of the Gambian people, to stifle the wishes and desires of the Gambian people, and all that in order to self-perpetuate. But I think all of us should really commence our drive, should now commence our efforts, serious efforts, to terminating this government's existence in 2026. It must start now, and we cannot postpone it. We cannot wait until 2026 and start on that exercise. It has to be done now. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I thank you for your attention, and I hope my ramblings make any sense to you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we have another 30 minutes at least to ask questions of the Secretary General and Party Leader. We will ask kindly for you to indicate your name, the media organization you are representing here, and you can ask your questions in English, Wolof, and yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Mondial and I work for the Police. You also made mention about the draft constitution. You feel that it's informal. And the president in his New Year message mentioned that he's got a commitment to bring that draft constitution. But then, will you in person or will you support any idea when some sections in the draft constitution that was passed by members of the Constitutional Review Commission submitted when it is added? Will you support that draft constitution?
If the constitution is altered?
Yes, we will go on the plan. Will you support that idea? You in person or will you call for that kind of work?
Well, let me say, I'm not sure how much committed the president is to the introduction of the draft constitution. You know, this president has been talking about his commitment to the Gambia having a new constitution. And yet, we saw how he manipulated it. We saw how he got his political advisor to go on Kirfatu to say that this constitution is a bad constitution, this draft constitution is a bad constitution. We are going to make sure that it does not survive. We are going to kick it out. Siakajata did so on Kirfatu. And he was speaking with full authority and with President Adamaparo in the knowledge of it. He was never reprimanded. So that shows that, you know, when they talk of having a new constitution, it's just mere lip service. It's not something that they really mean. And when the constitution got into the National Assembly, the entire UDP membership in the National Assembly voted for it. Barrow, his political allies in the National Assembly, all voted against it and defeated the constitution. And prior to that, I, on the eve of the introduction of that constitution in the National Assembly, I went on air, appealed to everybody, appealed to members of the National Assembly to really vote for this constitution, because this was what we had promised to the Gambian people. We have been yearning for electoral reform. We have been yearning for reforms of our institutions, of our laws. And the fundamental law that will provide the foundation for that, we must provide with that law. We must really make sure that it passes National Assembly. We have been committed, and we continue to be committed to having a new constitution for the Gambia. But we will not accept. I have made this clear once, not twice. Even the national facilitators, I made it quite clear to them that not a single section of that draft constitution must be omitted from it when it comes to National Assembly. It has to come to the National Assembly, and whatever changes are going to take place will take place in the National Assembly, but we are not accepting any changes by the government or any other person outside of the National Assembly. If they do, we will vote against it. We want the constitution that the Gambian people were sensitized on. The constitution, the draft on which we spent $116 million. Let it come to the National Assembly. And in the National Assembly, then whatever negotiations we want will be done by our elected representatives, not few members of the executive who to sit outside and then come with a draft. We will not accept it. I have made that clear, and I'm not ashamed to really make that statement. I'll continue to make that statement.
Yes. Gentlemen, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Anand Gawa, and I'm vice president. If I understand the amendment of government attempts to president reduce recovery fee from $1 million, right?
Sorry?
I mean,
yeah, the nomination fees.
Yeah. Attempted to be increased to $1 million. Is this a step towards all political parties, and is it a way of suppressing all the political parties or to aspiring candidates?
Well, yes, that's certainly my view. I mean, I'm sure you must recollect that I think the chairperson, the National Assembly chairperson on electoral matters, Honorable Swaibu Ture, I'm sure you must have read. I mean, it was in one of your papers. You must have read that that is the recommendation of their committee to hike the nomination fees to $1 million. I'm saying that is a threat to our democracy, that is scuttling, the right of individuals who might want to contest as presidential candidates. We are depriving them of the opportunity to really contest, because an independent candidate, maybe he may have some financiers, but what are the number of political parties I see on the register with the IEC? Yeah, if in addition to those one, you have individual members who might want to contest as independent candidates, and you charge them $1 million, really, you will really want to shut out the door to those people. And I think that is one of the threats to our democracy, that you cannot really confine the ability to contest presidential elections to only the people who are rich. And I have made that, and we are not rich, but I have said that United Democratic Party will not be a party that will be caught by this figure. We are in a position, we will be able to pay it, we are in a position to pay, and we will be able to pay it. But what about others who might be very good candidates, but then do not have $1 million, or if they take $1 million out of their campaign funds, it will really hamper their ability to carry out good and effective campaign.
What amount do you suggest to be for people to any aspiring candidates?
Well, I might be honest with you to say that the current I think is $10,000. The current figure of $10,000, I think it's on the low side. But I think, between $50,000 and $100,000 should be a reasonable amount. Between $50,000 and $10,000 or $100,000. But million, no. And then for registration of political parties also still is I think it's still 1 million. Yeah, still 1 million, So really.
Any other question?
Bakari Kamara, Kamara Officer. Also, in taking the back of for democracy, one of your supporter mention that President Aramabaruka. I conflict with IDP kita moti, police escort there, IDP kita moti, drama so there, and police sisters. It's a number of IDP that important in this politics. Was simple you London, one of these people, 1 million over last at your count, for the foreign camp, Kala Patriona, with the men who are living in the nation of Canada. Those are in finance for the school, Banco, political patrol, Masakula found a cover of humanity, please develop to somebody else. Even though we laugh for later.
Well, yeah, but what do kuma dolu melan ka ko ye political le ya abampu ntebe tembomento sezu de tembomento mamira nyantol dol jabila so ngamira the other people sobula mo doliye pour la faire bari amanyina mtonyo même maman qui inspection yal ko bari même mtonyo wala ngaf civil servant public servant e manyane dabula le politique auto well that's all simem fono elo simem fono elo karola momo nak itala ajube itala ba ajube la inila conscience tema wada be men ke ka fo silamu fo silate mampare inspector general police engage la on it mampare fem falama woto maybe ate yala ko ke suwala kono do ya wanyare bar bitu sabula wonya see yemen for about this $1 million amanke kot me yam karlo tale ko le me anu ka abe mirarol kono faske fa manya nakela bante ba kuma sala kabrin san kaf ka manya nakela te ba fula ko ne atara kafrobe kala nomination fees la kabo wulta lul kata wul keme amera wo is fair enough but million killing ngole kala no ya jamela jamano la ngole kumbon ya jamano la ko alafto posino la alafto le mantora la alafto le notela saying intel kombe change of government kala or change of system me ya lon ka ko banko sitama no al halolla memu mol nyabo koti nini nada funti wa jamano kono asike moye ntafula kija fara kode ba asike moye ke jakal kodi ka foko fokunu menja yata ya jamela jamano la wanyanta nyinya la bi jamano ko ten wanyanta sanyanta kala mole kono filto kodi bare quand même faut pour ma secondaire ma ko roke political parties la dunya la do ta be jetole in fact namere ka jubere ade polls e marje percentage men soto yawe yake wasa kande isi nyanta men sotla asi isa determine no maybe last local government election no niata yawe yo retota namena yindi bila ko do be sala be de nate ba ke la bawo ndela mol be dan ngeda wultande lola so ngabra tele tanya ta sala be de bari bishop telewa jansin men ka ko chairman olomnu IEC mo haklima ba mo lo mayalon ka ko IEC abata mandikan tilingni to nyakono men kanyanta political party wol tema ka sabatindi men nyanta masa kunani political party wol tema ka sabatindi wo ala report order men submit to the National Assembly I mentioned just one ka ko masa kunani nyanta le democracy fund londi mayano ka political party be banko kam isi itanding sopno jeto natra kafo ko be conditional melala e be sarto melala ni o sarto dimandi e fanansi itanding soto jeto isi ila kajol tamandino in fact ni constitutional review commission on men lo ta ten ya ñinin karo ke no tate la ñinin karo kono fo man sakunda ñante la kabulo dum kabulo ke fonkol kono political parties nol kono yeah jamal d'accord tak well at least la fo UDP d'accord tak ka ñata kala de yeah bare defan na be kala fam kana ko di choro sota ya fo ko yecce ko ta UDP afelen to $50,000 ya feke no UDP la biro be min dole yeah we la loi ya jo direct well it's all funding the activities of the political party kadu ko nata ka ko be sab la nyina ka ko no ko do nyita ngadum ibulu you know maybe party does not do the ma wasa e mantiling ista ko ta ko do nyinda ma ban nak party on ya ka ko laftale 5 computers la be men distribute to our bureaus ya order ya samba jeto lafta ñi me yalon ka ko do ko choros na tambol adu ñi mu ko ma yalon ka ko ma sakunda ñandale ayamira barbawa nak namira ya ñi la ka ko na ñi ko do di la be jorande di la njawala bura yen kele itaji tazan nagara ba yudi ma sakuna ni to na ta jeto asilo ñen pat mo bes ñi la ko democracy fund del ba lon lale pour political parties wel meya satos timmandi Fonye, it can benefit from it.
Yes, sir. Gentleman in white shirt.
I'm Suebu from SS Media. And then Lafa Kenyan Kamben Nawolam come Amanka election time but Gambians right now are asking this question. Who is going to lead for UDP next election 2026? We want to know if you have plans of continuing the race in 2026.
Semaine fois wonon kavo ko UDP ko yen tali yen tambini ngakela nyaton ko ti ko jandi be nyaton ko fo jandi to mo do be sila ko pour nyaton ko o do ko mbole ke kan and kawo kon lafta men nyin kala ferme ya non ka fa man si may fa ya ko nyim man election yati ko man din kol ka fo man kol ka fo you know ebe fem fola me yalon ka ko sa to a hypothetical situation mamira ina fasuto mod nyanta nyil lon na ka ko you know human beings, they are not permanent, they are transient or kusi kelele honeyman transit. It makes you ineffective, it makes you ineffectual ni kuranda yama you become ineffectual ni fata. So why should I be telling people kabako milafta next election contest the malo for jani sinindi better la jato. I think those are futile phone calls. Memo ko kabako do ko member be as leader of the party modo ko nyimbake kaje adum be kon la ko kana ba wo membulle be kon na ko ke sama member kala sama for election ba fa election number 2 ni election wato sita ni member jando ni you know ba announce la member kala UDP la candidate. Yeah, so wait for that. You know, in the meantime, I'm campaigning for people to join UDP. I'm campaigning for people to abandon other parties and come and join UDP so that the 2026 UDP will form the government in this country. Well, what am I doing? Just a little rectification for and I don't turn to the gentleman Jao and I still get fourth lagona lair the National Assembly Self-Committee on Electoral Matters in order of the proposal is a recommendation. I hope that it will not be endorsed by the rest of the members of the National Assembly. Naguna President Adam Barrow Moko propose, Wamane President Adam Barrow propose, Moko propose. Why not? Munge proposals you mu ngi xew ci jamono président Adama Barrow président Adama Barrow mi nga xam ne moo taxawoon in 2016 in fact 2015 bi mu bokkoon UDP bokk na ci wax ne Yaya Jammeh ni mu increase nomination fees from 10,000 to 1 million was unrealistic. It was all done pour mun a néewal doole other political parties or xañ leen opportunity pour ñu mun a participate in the presidential elections. On ci jamono nag loolu war daa am te xëy na ni may wax nii moom itam mu ngi xalaatee noonu ne warta am waaye nag na des nag su demee ci néegi député yi ñu approve ko te man naa xam naa ne opposition elements yi ñoom dañ ko oppose waaye su ñu nee ne ñoom suñ ko approuvé kon nga xam ne lii Adama Barrow bokk na ci tooga bi so day def National Assembly bi rek pour yàkka ko foofu so loolu laa def waaye pour bokk ak yeneen political parties nag in 2006 found it's too early pour di wax about alliances man li ma foog mooy ne every political parties da nga gëm sa bopp ne mun naa win elections on my own. I think so every political party da gëm boo ngay am waaye nag loolu wartaa tax nag ne doo mun a bokk ak keneen pour ngeen bokk fight an election. We have always been open to alliances and if again in 2006 we find it necessary to go into an alliance, certainly nañ ko def parce que mbooloo moo gën a am doole than individual living. So loolu la tontu boobu laa am pour sa question bi.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Dawud Ahmed from Honorable, you talked about UDP stand firm on rejection of that constitution. The which brought before National Assembly and changes are made outside the National Assembly. Knowing that some members who participated in voting against this constitution are still in the National Assembly. Are you confident that if any changes that, as you suggested, to be made in the Parliament, are you confident that these honorable members will do justice in terms of making amendments in this constitution that is considered to be in court?
And I don't understand the.
I mean, you said that Barrow. Someone asked you here a question that Barrow said the constitution will be bring back, and then you said if there is amendment or changes to be made, UDP stand firm. It will be done in the National Assembly, and if it is done outside the National Assembly, you will instruct members of the UDP to vote against, and you will advocate for people to vote against it. My question is now: are you confident that bringing it back to the National Assembly for the necessary changes to be made will be done according to how we feel about it?
Well, if it's brought to the National Assembly without any changes to be made in the National Assembly, I think will be determined by the members of the National Assembly. I cannot sit here and make a commitment for them. They are the ones who are going to look at that law, and they are the ones who will really decide whether or not they want to effect any amendments to it or not. So I cannot really make any commitment to say that they will really make changes to it because I do not sit in National Assembly. But what I say is that, the reasonable expectation of the Gambian people, our party will always stand for that in the National Assembly when it comes to passing of any legislation, including the Constitution of the Gambia.
Sorry, my question is, are you confident that they will do justice to those things?
Well, this is what I'm saying, that I do not want to make any commitment on them. And I would expect that the members of the National Assembly are in the National Assembly to really attend to the affairs of the Gambian people. Dispassionately, they are in the National Assembly really to do justice to whatever is brought before them. And that is what I expect them to do. But I cannot tell you that this is what they will do. Because if they decide to do something that you probably think has been the monumental injustice to that constitution, then I would have been proved wrong. Yeah? So I think, let's leave it to go to the National Assembly, and if any changes are going to be done, let it be done in National Assembly. and the National Assembly feels that there should be no changes, then let the bill be passed and we go to a referendum.
Any more questions? The also wanted to ask a question of the party list.
Many press conference to be because your question better response because the diaspora made a dear science and interest on the election Jama Jele na the start. Now Jele diaspora ke kato muke for Gambia Banco also position. The central bank recorded Jube Sang. Remittances of Lucas on Gambia for the 747 million. Wala mumbe record Lucana Tuma Falan or Control Financial. Masakunda, I don't know Masakunda, I promise Balekenu. Abraham Mansayani. Oh, now winter. About Tara put there for a Kakadota. Kadre Fayo, Monica di Mona. Kadre Fayo will a civic duty, a civic responsibility. In a bank of the year. One of Kadre Fayo, so it can be like Kadre Fayo. And Musa, quite a more than a dunia, you must have put up on Padeka. So Masakunda Mugaro back in the degree moon. One of Masakunda Miano, see what I will do. Is very important because in America, at France, at Japan, Dunia, Bero, it's a way kumbo what. In the Colombian, the national pita, Tel Capanco, America, Catula, Alaska, Cariboro, the campaign, I'm unfair. But a Kuman Kero, put diaspora. The left the Munich in Carabolo, what's the leader? Rata Safu, New Alayake, and New Alabama Canada, 2026, we did most of that. Now, speaker, Dr. Ayo answer because we were very long. Nimru Tamini for the blood. I tell you on a plan, put diaspora. Pull Nim UDP Masakula, Caesar, Captain Lota UDP and so that diaspora man, what he can do near Mumma. I don't Laftar on another season, while UDP must have put a season. You don't want to follow diaspora. Besides your panel, the Lamfula, the Wula and the Doku, and our local Lampo Benyatula, Binari Lukili. But in the Dami, the Dimona, Mojama came to the side. The Capone come back. Mune Benya Akono. Being Laftar party leader, Mumbe, Telpana, Akono. Who next election you will. Next question about the
Well, Mr. So, now my question of many Kafan Jabolo. Kafan Yala Jabolo, Kat UDP, Kawia Jamila Time, UDP Mang Trafem Yininka to extend the franchise to the Gambians in the diaspora. And because you cannot accept that community as the 8th region of the Gambia, an 8th region that contributes at least 23% GDP. You cannot really legitimately shut them out from the process of deciding who should be in charge of the affairs of the Gambia. It's not fair. I want to left a lot of Nako, but President, gentlemen, for co-president have committed to having a new constitution. We hope that will happen so that the constitution specifically mentions diaspora voting as Ikeno. But I also want to think that apart from the Constitution, the case of Bakar Dabo versus the Attorney General has put beyond doubt whether a new constitution or no new constitution. Under the current constitution, Gambians can vote and should vote in diaspora. So, it is only for the IEC, with that judgment in their hand, and also relying on Section 124 of the Elections Act. Natara, if a new act may not more bond jeto. Now, on the current Section 124 of the Elections Act to really extend the franchise to diaspora. The law is there. Supreme Court has decided. You decide in the case of Bakar Bunjadabo. It's a question of just implementing the orders of that court, and also implementing or taking advantage of Section 124 of the Elections Act, which provides that the IEC should make regulations for the registration of Gambian nationals abroad for the purpose of elections. So I'm to it. But I think it's the political will. Just as Yahya lacked the political will, I'm not sure, but maybe Barrow also lacks this political will, because I had a kind of Spain war. Fabuka for Spain now on video about Spain, but look on the Spain code that Manaka can Kurang Bondi, and the Manaka Mama Parabondi. So to welcome UDP. But I can assure you, Kafoko, we hope we don't get to that. But even if you do, and there is problem of having the constitutional provision, and we can rely on other laws other than the Constitution to ensure that the people of the diaspora, they are enfranchised so that they can really vote at the presidential election. What for me, when we some deep thinking is when elections to the National Assembly, when you have 53. So far, when you have 53 constituencies, and this may likely increase to, maybe 60 or 63. It may likely do so. Whether you can have the ballot boxes for all those 53 constituencies in the diaspora to vote, that is about for the presidential guy. That's absolutely, for me, that's absolutely no problem. We should have done so long ago. In fact, if Bishop Teresa Johnson was alive, it would have been done the James time. I have no doubt about that, because he had the determination, he had the idea, and he was willing to do so, and he was willing to tap resources to fund the registration of Gambians in diaspora. He was so willing. Yeah.
We'll take the last question. Gentleman in the leader's
Good afternoon, Honorable Dabo. In his New Year message, the President, in his New Year message, he mentioned many things that the country has gone through in the past year. Among many things, except for corruption, which he barely mentioned in his speech. Corruption being one of the enemies of our country at this stage, how disappointed is your party seeing that the government hasn't done enough fight against corruption?
Well, I think I have stated that in this briefing with you, that we are determined to fight corruption, and that a UDP government will certainly not treat incidents of corruption the manner in which the current government is handling them. In fact, I had on various occasions challenged the government to use the anti-corruption law that was in the statute book that was passed in 2012. It may have its deficiencies, but that notwithstanding, there is a law, and it's for you to really implement that law. Take the necessary action if you are really serious in fighting corruption. Take all the necessary steps so that people will see that you are really serious with fight against corruption. You don't have to say that I have to wait for the anti-corruption bill that is before the National Assembly to pass when you already have one. And you are repeating that, the 2012 legislation, by the current legislation. And indeed, my take on his I don't think it's a mistake. It's not. It's accidental. I think it's deliberate. You know, for his omission, deliberate omission, not to mention the fight against corruption or the anti-corruption bill. I think it was deliberate, and that is why I said while I applaud the National Assembly members for passing the legislation, I hope there will be the political will to really see to its implementation. So, since you notice that the president himself has not has not mentioned it, he's not giving any priority. So let us see what he does after the National Assembly have done their job, what he does with the anti-corruption bill. And I hope that nobody is going to cite to me that, look at the case of Khalifa Banja, look at the case of these three people. I hope nobody is going to cite to me those incidents as being the fight against corruption. I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes very close to people who are in the corridor of power, that really there are people who should be brought forward for prosecution.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I thank you very much on behalf of the Secretary General and the party leader for coming to this special session. In this age of fake news and all kinds of speculation, we hope and we will endeavor really to have more information sessions where you will have the messages from, as they say in English, from the horse's mouth, so that these hypothesizing speculations will be a thing of the past. UDP, we have one voice, and it's a clear voice. It's the conscience of the nation. It's the university of the nation. Just last Friday or 2 Fridays ago, we remember our great fallen heroes, and we celebrate the living heroes of the United Democratic Party. We are hopeful that Gambians are becoming more and more conscious about the politics of purpose, politics that is about changing the lives of Gambian citizens.